I'm Nora Caldwell, and the year I turned 32, a thick manila folder rewrote every rule I thought I knew about family. My grandmother Lorraine turned 79 that October Saturday. She spent the morning baking her signature vanilla cake, swirling buttercream roses on top the way she had since before I was born. She set the table for 8, her best china, the linen napkins she only brought out for holidays, a centerpiece of dried hydrangeas she'd clipped from her garden that summer. No one showed. My parents were skiing in Aspen. My brother Aaron sent a text at 4:17, HBD Gran. Slopes are fire. My dad didn't text at all. My mom posted a selfie in her ski goggles to her church group chat, captioned, "So blessed." I drove 3 hours from Hartford after my shift, a gas station bouquet of sunflowers on the passenger seat, and found her sitting alone at the kitchen table, candle wax melted into the frosting, a puddle of melted Neapolitan ice cream soaking through the linen napkin under the cake plate. She looked up at me like she wasn't sure I was real. I cut her a slice. I sang happy birthday twice, because she asked me to start over halfway through the first time. The next morning, while I was washing the good plates, 2 strangers knocked on the door. They handed me a sealed manila folder, thick, signed in my grandmother's looping handwriting. What happened after that didn't just end my family as I knew it, it showed me exactly who I was supposed to be. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet boundaries shift everything and dignity always gets the last word. If you've ever had to advocate for someone who couldn't advocate for themselves, drop a comment and hit subscribe. I'd left Hartford at 5 p.m., still in my work flats, the sun setting over I-91 before I turned onto the back roads of Briarwood. The old oaks arched over the pavement like the rafters of a country church, their leaves just starting to turn gold. I pulled into her gravel driveway at 8:14. The porch light was on. Every other window was dark. Inside, the kitchen table told the whole story. 8 place settings, a hydrangea centerpiece Lorraine had arranged that morning. The cake sat in the middle, vanilla buttercream roses, 79, spelled out in purple gel. The candles had burned down to waxy nubs stuck in the frosting. A gallon of Neapolitan had sweated through its carton onto the tablecloth. She was sitting at the head of the table in her lavender cardigan, hands folded around a glass of water. "Nora." She smiled, then frowned. "Is it Tuesday?" "It's Saturday, Gran. Your birthday." "Oh." She touched the cake. "I thought I was making this for the church bake sale." I set the sunflowers in a mason jar and fixed her a plate. We ate cake with our hands because neither of us felt like washing forks. I sang happy birthday twice because halfway through the first time, she asked me to start over. At 10 o'clock, I carried her to bed. She weighed nothing. Her wrist was the width of a paper towel roll. As I pulled the quilt to her chin, she grabbed my hand. Her eyes went sharp, focused, like a radio catching a signal through static. "They think I don't notice," she whispered. I waited for more. She was already asleep. "Let me tell you who I am in this family." The Caldwells of Briarwood are the kind of Connecticut comfortable people mean when they say old money adjacent. My dad, Gregory, used to manage regional accounts for an insurance firm until he transitioned to consulting, which mostly meant golfing 3 times a week and taking long lunches at the Briarwood Club. My mom, Diane, sat on the garden club board and planned every charity gala in town. My brother Aaron ran AC Development Group and drove a BMW that cost more than my annual salary. Then there was me, the paralegal at a 4-person elder law firm in Hartford, specializing in wills, trusts, and guardianship filings. I made $47,000 a year and studied for the bar at night. My family called me the paperwork girl, like I was selling beaded keychains at a farmer's market instead of helping people protect their life's work. I didn't argue. I'd learned to read the fine print no one else bothered with. But this house was mine in every way that mattered, and no way that counted. I took my first steps on that kitchen linoleum. Lorraine taught me to read a lease on the back porch when I was 19, her reading glasses perched on her nose, a red pen between her teeth. She co-signed my first apartment because my parents wouldn't. I slept in the guest room that night, lying awake tracing the ceiling crack I'd traced since I was 6. Around midnight, I got up for a glass of water. Tucked behind a framed photo of the whole family on the hallway shelf, I found a business card for Voss Dean Realty, with a handwritten note on the back, appraised value, $680,000. Need close in 30 days. I slid the card back into place. My hands didn't shake, but my stomach did. Sunday morning, I scrubbed buttercream off the china while Lorraine dozed in her recliner. I took the recycling out around 10, and that's when I saw it. A realtor's combination lockbox clamped to the gas meter, tucked behind the overgrown hydrangea bushes, so it was invisible from the front walk. I'd seen 100 of them on Briarwood listings. Someone had been showing this house. I went back inside and dug through the pile of unsorted mail on the hallway table. Buried between a utility bill and a coupon flyer was a listing sheet for 14 Oakwood Lane, marked off-market, printed on Voss Dean letterhead. For bedrooms, 2.5 baths, original hardwood floors, quarter-acre lot, listed at $680K, $50K under the last comparable sale in the neighborhood. Then I found the worst part, tucked in the kitchen junk drawer, a half-filled purchase agreement. Buyer, Stonewall Capital Group LLC. Cash offer. 30-day close. The seller's signature line was blank, but someone had penciled L. Caldwell in block letters underneath, like a practice run. The listing agent was Brenda Voss. The seller's rep? Aaron Caldwell. I sat on the kitchen floor, spreading the pages around me like a paper mosaic. The lockbox, the listing sheet, the purchase agreement, Brenda's card, a sticky note in Diane's handwriting, closing target, November 15th. That was 3 weeks away. I picked up the manila folder from the nightstand, broke the wax seal, and found a stack of documents I recognized from work, a recorded deed, a trust instrument, a durable power of attorney, notarized witness pages, a physician's letter dated 14 months ago. Clipped to the front was a handwritten note on Lorraine's pale blue stationery, the same deliberate script. Nora, when they come for the house, open this. Everything you need is here. I love you. I'm sorry it has to be you. I read the note 3 times. Each time the words "when they come for the house" landed harder. Not if. When. She'd known. 14 months ago, before the forgetting got bad, before she started calling me by my mom's name, before the wandering and the stove left on, before the day she got lost driving to the post office 2 blocks away. She'd known someone would come for the house. She'd prepared. That note kept me up all night. I lay in the guest room with the folder on the nightstand, watching the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. Monday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Something in me said to stay. At 10:17, someone knocked. A woman in her early 60s stood on the porch, silver bob tucked under a wool coat, a leather briefcase slung over her shoulder. The man beside her looked to be in his 40s, carrying a zippered pouch with a notary seal inside. Nora Caldwell? The woman asked. Yes. I'm Ruth Adler. This is my colleague Nathan Pruitt. Your grandmother retained my firm 14 months ago. She held out the manila folder, sealed with a wax flap, my grandmother's name printed in blue ink on the tab. She asked us to deliver this to you personally when the time came. When the time came for what? Ruth glanced at the recliner through the screen door. Her expression softened by a degree. Come to my office when you're ready. Here's my card. Don't discuss this with your parents before we talk. They were in their car and pulling away before I could form a second question. I stood on the porch holding the folder. It was heavier than it looked. Maybe 40 pages. The seal had been signed across the flap in Lorraine's handwriting, looping and deliberate, the way she signed birthday cards and Christmas checks. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane, who was at the door. Don't sign anything, Nora. I turned the phone face down and brought the folder inside. Ruth Adler's office was on the 2nd floor of a converted brownstone on Farmington Avenue. The waiting room had a worn cotton rug, framed diplomas from Quinnipiac Law, and a small sign that read Adler Associates, Elder Law Estate Planning. I'd called at 7:30 that morning, and her receptionist patched me through in under a minute, which, if you know anything about law firms, meant they'd been expecting my call. Miss Caldwell. Ruth's voice was the same measured calm I'd heard on the porch. I'm glad you reached out. Can you come in today? I drove the 3 hours again. Ruth met me in a conference room with a pot of Earl Grey and a box of tissues she set between us without comment. Your grandmother came to me 14 months ago, she began. Early August of last year. She'd had an episode, got disoriented driving, ended up 2 towns over, couldn't remember how to get home. A neighbor brought her back, and she called me the next morning. She knew you already? She knew my firm. Her friend Dorothy used us for her trust. She came in alone, sharp, focused. Ruth paused. Scared. Of what? Of exactly what's happening now. She told me, my son will do whatever Diane tells him, and Diane will sell this house the minute I can't stop her. She wanted to stop it before she couldn't. I set my tea down. She chose you, Miss Caldwell. Specifically. She said you were the only one who would fight for this house, because you were the only one who understood what it meant. I set my tea down. She didn't choose my dad? Ruth looked at me over her reading glasses. No, she did not. The weight of that settled in my chest like a stone dropped into still water. My dad was Lorraine's only child. He'd grown up in that kitchen. She'd paid for his college, his first suit, danced at his wedding. And when it came time to hand over the keys to her life, she'd driven past him and picked me. Because she knew. She knew Gregory would defer to Diane. She knew Diane would calculate. She knew Aaron would need. Your grandmother executed the documents on August 9th of last year, Ruth continued. Full capacity. Dr. Mercer, her neurologist, provided a written evaluation the same day confirming she understood exactly what she was signing. She tapped the physician's letter. This is your foundation. The legal architecture was airtight. I recognized every instrument from my work. First, a revocable living trust. Lorraine had transferred the house, the deed, the title, everything into the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust, dated August 9th of last year. She was the trustee while she had capacity. I was the successor trustee. If she became incapacitated, legal control of the house passed to me. Not my dad. Not Aaron. Me. Second, a durable power of attorney. Lorraine had named me her agent for all financial and healthcare decisions. The durability clause meant it survived her incapacity. It didn't expire when she got sick. It activated. Third, the physician's letter. Dr. Mercer had examined Lorraine on August 9th and documented that she had full testamentary capacity. She understood what a trust was, what a POA did, and that she was placing her house beyond the reach of anyone except the granddaughter she trusted. So the house isn't hers anymore? I said. Technically correct, Ruth said. The house belongs to the trust. Lorraine can't sell it as an individual. And under this structure, no one holding a personal POA over Lorraine has authority over assets already in the trust. Only the trustee can authorize a sale. And the trustee is you. I drove back to Briarwood that evening. The house was quiet, the porch light on as always. Through the front window, I could see Lorraine in her recliner, the TV murmuring, her reading glasses folded on the armrest. I let myself in with the spare key she'd given me when I was 16, the one she'd never given my parents. Gran, I said. She looked up. For 4 full seconds, her eyes were absolutely clear. Not the soft confusion of most days. Not the pleasant fog. Clear, like creek water over smooth gravel. You went to see Ruth, she said. I stopped in the doorway. You remember Ruth? I remember enough. She turned her reading glasses in her hands. I remember I was scared, and I went to a lawyer, and I told her what Diane would do. Did I get it right? I sat on the arm of the couch. You got it exactly right, Gran. Good. She put the glasses on, then took them off again, like she'd forgotten why she'd reached for them. They've been bringing people through the house. Tuesdays, when the nurse is here. I hear the doors open and close. Strangers looking at my kitchen. I know. Your dad won't look at me when he visits. He talks to the walls. She pressed her lips together. Aaron brought papers. I don't remember what I signed. I took her hand. It was thin, the width of a paper towel roll, but her grip was deliberate. It doesn't matter what you signed. You already took care of it. She squeezed my fingers. I'm not gone yet, Nora. The words hung between us, fragile and fierce. By tomorrow, she might not remember saying them. But I would. I'd remember for both of us. Aaron showed up on Wednesday. He didn't knock, he never did. Just walked in, car keys jingling, that practiced smile already in place, like the room should be grateful he'd arrived. "Hey, Nor," he said, kissing the top of my head. He smelled like cedar cologne and the leather interior of his $50,000 BMW. "Checking in on Gran." "That's sweet. I'm staying for a while." "Oh yeah." He opened the fridge, grabbed an iced sparkling water, and set the can on the crocheted doily Gran kept on the counter, like he owned the place. "Taking some time off from the paralegal gig?" He said, "Paralegal, the way you'd say, hobby." "Aaron, I know about the listing." His hand paused halfway to his mouth. 2 beats. Then the smile shifted, warmth replaced by negotiation. "Look, I know it seems fast, but here's the thing. The company's in a rough patch. I've got a $740,000 balloon payment due in 8 weeks. If I miss it, the bank takes everything. 3 years of work, gone. So you're selling Gran's house." "I'm helping the family manage an asset Gran can't manage herself." He set the can down. "Nora, the money fixes everything. Gran gets a nice facility. Mom and Dad stop worrying. I keep my business. Everybody wins. Except Gran. Gran doesn't even know what day it is. She knows people are walking through her house." Aaron's jaw tightened. He stepped closer. "Don't make this difficult. We're family. Family helps family. Is that what you told her when you brought the papers?" He stared at me. Then the smile came back, harder now. "It's basically sold already, Nora. The closing is set." He left his empty can on the counter and walked out without rinsing it. That night, I searched. Behind a stack of old Reader's Digest magazines in the bottom of the hallway credenza, I found what they'd had her sign. A power of attorney dated September 3rd, barely 2 months ago. It named Gregory Caldwell as Lorraine's agent for all financial and property decisions. Stapled to it was a listing authorization for the house, also dated September 3rd, granting Aaron the right to act as seller's representative. I laid both documents on the kitchen table beside the originals from Ruth's folder. The signature differences hit me before I'd even unfolded the pages. Lorraine's trust documents from 14 months ago had strong pen pressure, clean, confident loops, every letter connecting to the next with that distinctive tail on the capital L. I knew that hand. It was the woman who'd written grocery lists in cursive and signed my high school permission slips with a fountain pen. The September POA? Trembling lines. The L barely rose above the baseline. The loops collapsed. The pen had lifted between letters, leaving gaps where flow should be. This wasn't the hand of a woman who understood what she was signing. This was the hand of a woman who'd been told where to press down. I checked my phone calendar. September 3rd. My stomach dropped. That was the same week Lorraine had been taken to the ER after a fall. I'd gotten a text from Diane. Gran took a tumble. Nothing serious. Resting. The discharge summary, buried in the mail pile, noted patient disoriented, intermittent confusion, recommend neurological follow-up. They'd had her sign a POA during the same week she'd been hospitalized for confusion. I took photos of everything, then called Ruth. Ruth came to the house on Friday. Not her office, the house. She said it mattered that we do this at Lorraine's kitchen table. I understood why the moment she laid everything out. The old maple table was scratched from 50 years of Thanksgivings, stained with coffee rings Lorraine always said gave it character. Now it held 5 documents in a row, edges aligned like evidence at a hearing. Document 1. The recorded trust deed filed with the Briarwood Town Clerk on August 12th of last year. The house had been legally transferred into the Lorraine Caldwell Revocable Living Trust 14 months ago. Stamped, indexed, recorded. Public record. Document 2. The durable power of attorney naming me, Nora Caldwell, as Lorraine's agent. Executed the same day. 2 witnesses. Notarized by Nathan Pruitt. Document 3. Dr. Mercer's capacity evaluation letter dated August 9th. 2 pages. Clinical. Precise. Mrs. Caldwell demonstrates full understanding of the nature and consequences of the legal instruments she is executing. She is oriented to time, place, and person. She identifies her assets accurately and articulates clear preferences for their disposition. Document 4. The September power of attorney. The one naming Gregory. Shaky signature. No capacity evaluation. No independent witness. Executed during a week of documented medical confusion. Document 5. The listing agreement. Aaron's name as seller's representative. Brenda Voss as agent. An off-market sale priced $50,000 below comparable homes. Ruth stood across from me, hands flat on the table. The house has been in the trust for over a year. Your grandmother cannot sell it as an individual. The September power of attorney, even if it were valid, doesn't grant authority over trust assets. And it almost certainly isn't valid given the medical record. This sale cannot close. The house was never theirs to sell. I stared at the documents, at the two signatures side by side. One strong, one trembling. At the physician's letter that drew a line between the woman Lorraine was and the woman they'd taken advantage of. Diane's voice echoed in my head. She won't remember the house by Christmas. But Lorraine had remembered. She'd remembered before any of them. Ruth and I made a plan. Quiet. Methodical. The kind built on paper, not anger. Step 1. Get a current capacity evaluation for Lorraine to confirm the September POA was signed when she lacked mental competence. I called Dr. Mercer's office Monday morning. The receptionist put me on hold for 11 minutes. When she came back, her voice had that careful, practiced quality I recognized from my own work, the tone people use when they're wrapping bad news in protocol. I'm sorry, MS. Caldwell, but we've received a request to restrict access to Mrs. Caldwell's medical records. I gripped the phone. Restrict access? From whom? I can't disclose that, but I can tell you the request came in approximately 6 weeks ago, and it specifies that medical records and evaluation results are not to be released to anyone other than the designated family contact. And who is the designated family contact? Pause. Gregory Caldwell. My father. They'd locked me out of her medical records. I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. 6 weeks ago, right after they'd had her sign the power of attorney. They hadn't just gotten her to sign. They'd built a wall around her. I called Ruth. Expected, she said, not sounding surprised. We'll file a HIPAA authorization under the durable POA. Your POA predates theirs and names you as healthcare agent. The clinic is legally obligated to honor it. I'll send the paperwork today. 2 days later, I had the records. Dr. Mercer agreed to perform a current evaluation. The system works, I told myself. Slowly, but it works. Diane came to the house on a Thursday evening. She didn't bring flowers or food. She brought a glossy brochure for Maple Glen Assisted Living. She spread it on the kitchen table, the same table where Ruth and I had laid out the documents 3 days earlier. It's a beautiful facility, Nora. Private rooms, a garden, activities every afternoon. Gran doesn't want to leave her house. Gran doesn't know what she wants. Diane smoothed the brochure with both palms. Your father and I have been looking into this for weeks. If we transition her before Thanksgiving, we can have the house staged and listed by December 1st. I looked at her. She was wearing her church pearls and the cashmere scarf she'd bought in Aspen. You're staging the house for the buyer you already have. Diane's expression flickered. Just a flash. The briefest crack in the plaster. Nora, I know this is emotional for you. You've always been attached to this house, but your brother's company is in real trouble, and this family needs to pull together. By selling a 79-year-old woman's home out from under her. After everything I've done for this family, her voice cracked. Real tears or performative ones? I couldn't tell. And after 32 years, I'd stopped trying. The papers are already with the title company, she said. The closing is November 15th. This is happening, Nora. She left the brochure on the table. I almost walked away that night. It would have been easier. But if you've ever watched someone decide an older person's worth comes with an expiration date, you know exactly why I stayed. If this story hits close to home, type I see her in the comments and subscribe so you're here for what happens at the closing table. I had 9 days. The closing was set for November 15th at Main Street Title Escrow, 3 blocks from the Briarwood Town Green. Diane had booked it like a dinner reservation. Efficient. Final. Not open for discussion. Ruth laid out the options the next morning. Option 1. File an emergency petition with probate court to block the sale. It would work, but it would be public, slow, expensive, and give Aaron and Diane time to scramble. Option 2. Let the closing happen. Walk in with the documents. Let the truth do what truth does when it meets paperwork that can't withstand it. If you show up with the recorded trust deed and the capacity evidence, Ruth said, the title company will do the work for you. They can't insure a title that's in dispute. They won't close the transaction. It ends in that room. And if they try to push through anyway, title officers are personally liable. No officer with a brain will record a deed they know is defective. Ruth took off her glasses and set them on the table. This is the quieter path. No courtroom. No filings. Just documents on a table in front of witnesses. The buyer, the agent, the title officer, your family, they'll all be in one room. And the documents will speak for themselves. I thought about Lorraine's note, when they come for the house. She hadn't told me to go to court. She'd given me a folder. Let the documents talk, Ruth said. Day 1 of 9. I filed a report with Adult Protective Services. I sat in my car outside the Briarwood Municipal Building and dialed the state elder abuse hotline. The intake worker was patient, precise, and completely unsurprised by anything I described. She'd heard it before. Different names, same architecture. I gave her the facts. A 79-year-old woman with documented dementia, a POA signed during a week of hospitalization, an off-market sale priced below market value, a son profiting from the transaction, a daughter-in-law directing the process. We'll assign an investigator, the intake worker said. You'll receive a case number within 72 hours. Is there anything that expedites the process? You mentioned a closing date in 9 days. I'll flag it as time-sensitive. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat in the car for a full minute watching 2 elderly women walk into the library across the street arm in arm, laughing about something. Normal. Safe. When I got back to the house, I found a voicemail from Ruth. Nora, something interesting came up. APS told me informally that yours isn't the first report they've received on this situation. Someone filed an anonymous complaint 6 weeks ago. They didn't follow up at the time because the complainant didn't leave contact information, but the file exists. 6 weeks ago. Right around the time they'd had Lorraine sign the September POA. Someone else had seen what was happening. Someone who hadn't been brave enough to leave a name, but had cared enough to pick up the phone. The system was slower than anger, but it was building. Day 4. My father came alone. He pulled into the driveway in his 10-year-old Chevy, the car he used for errands, the one nobody would notice. He sat behind the wheel for a long time before he got out. I watched from the kitchen window. His shoulders were hunched. He looked smaller than I remembered. He came in through the back door the way he'd entered this house since he was a boy. He didn't acknowledge me at first. He just stood in the kitchen and looked around, at the cabinets his mother had refinished herself, at the window over the sink where she'd hung a prism that threw rainbows across the floor every morning. She used to sing in this kitchen, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Patsy Cline. Every Sunday morning. I remember. He sat at the table. He put his hands flat on the maple surface and I saw them shake. I know what you think of me. I waited. I didn't want this. Any of this. Aaron's in over his head. Diane says the house is the only way. And Mom, his voice broke. Just barely. A hairline fracture in a foundation. Mom wouldn't want Aaron to lose everything. You could still stop this, Dad. He looked at me. For one awful, trembling second, I saw the boy who'd grown up in this kitchen, who'd eaten cake off these plates, who'd been carried to bed by the same woman now sleeping in the next room. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Diane. He stood up. I should go. He left through the back door. He didn't say goodbye to his mother. I washed his coffee cup and put it away. Day 5, I bought a cake. An 8-inch round from the bakery on Elm Street. Vanilla with buttercream, her favorite, and a single number 79 candle, because 79 individual candles seemed like a fire hazard, and I wanted to make her laugh. I set it on the kitchen table at 3 o'clock. I put out 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 napkins. I made tea. Gran, come sit. She shuffled in from the living room, reading glasses on top of her head, a crossword puzzle folded in her cardigan pocket. She saw the cake and stopped. Whose birthday? Yours. We're doing it over. She sat down. I lit the candle. She looked at the flame the way you look at something you're trying to hold in your mind, carefully, deliberately, like if she stared hard enough the moment would stick. Make a wish, I said. She closed her eyes. She blew. The candle went out on the first try. What did you wish for? She looked at me with those clear creek eyes. I wish you'd stay. We ate cake with forks this time. She told me about the hydrangeas she'd planted along the front walk in 1987, the year I was born. She told me the kitchen table came from her mother's house in Bridgeport, carried in on the back of a pickup truck in 1974, and that every scratch on its surface was a Thanksgiving she'd won. Then she put her fork down and leaned toward me. Don't let them take the table, she said, quiet, fierce. I won't, Gran. The table stays. I cleared the plates. I washed the dish. I wrapped the leftover cake in foil and wrote Gran's birthday, round 2 on it with a Sharpie. For days until the closing. Day 6. The phone calls started. My Aunt Carolyn, my father's cousin, called first. She was careful, concerned. Nora, honey, your mother says you're trying to take control of Lorraine's finances. She says you're, well, she used the word manipulating. I held the phone away from my ear and looked at the ceiling. Aunt Carolyn, did Diane mention that she and Aaron are trying to sell Gran's house while Gran has dementia? Silence. She said it was a family decision. It's a decision Gran didn't make. My mom's friend from the parish council called next. Then Aaron's business partner. Then a woman from the garden club who'd known Lorraine for 40 years. Each call carried the same script, slight variations on the same theme. Nora is overstepping. Nora is emotional. Nora doesn't understand the family's financial situation. Diane had shaped the narrative before I had a chance to speak. I didn't counter it. I didn't post on social media. I didn't call anyone back to plead my case. Ruth had told me, the documents speak. You don't have to. But on day 6, around 9 o'clock at night, my phone rang one more time. Aunt June, Lorraine's younger sister, 81, still sharp, still living in New Haven. Nora. Her voice was dry and clear. I don't believe a word Diane is saying, and I want you to know why. Why? Because your grandmother called me last year. August. She said she'd been to see a lawyer. She said she was putting the house in order while she still could. She said, if anything happens, back Nora up. I gripped the phone. I'm backing you up, Aunt June said. Whatever you need. 3 days until the closing. Day 7, Ruth and I confirmed the details. Main Street Title Escrow, November 15th, 2 p.m., Conference Room 3. The escrow officer was Marissa Cole, 22 years in the business, Ruth's contact said, thorough, by the book. The buyer was Stonewall Capital Group, the same cash acquisition firm that bought undervalued residential properties, flipped or rented them, and moved on. Their representative was a man named Daniel Fossey. Brenda Voss would be there as the listing agent. Diane and Aaron would attend as sellers' representatives. Gregory would come because Diane told him to. Ruth made one more off-the-record call to the title company and learned something that made her pause. Marissa Cole flagged the file 3 weeks ago, Ruth told me. During the preliminary title search, she noted that the house was held in a trust. She contacted Brenda Voss for clarification. Brenda sent over a signed affidavit claiming the trust had been dissolved and the property reconveyed to Lorraine individually. Marissa accepted it provisionally, but noted in her file that no recorded reconveyance deed had been found. The closing was scheduled as tentative pending final title clearance. A clerical error. Brenda had told her the trust was dissolved. That wasn't true. The trust was never dissolved. The deed was still recorded. The deal was already standing on cracked ice. All it needed was someone to put the original on the table. Here's the thing about paperwork people underestimate. It doesn't raise its voice, and it doesn't forget. If you've ever been the quiet one nobody took seriously, this next part is for you. Subscribe and stay with me to the closing table. Day 8. Everything was in place. Ruth would attend as Lorraine's attorney of record representing the trust. She'd bring certified copies of the recorded trust deed, the durable POA, and the physician's capacity evaluation. Nathan Pruitt would come as a notary witness. APS had assigned an investigator named Sandra Weeks. She wouldn't be in the room, but she'd confirm the case was active and time-sensitive. Whatever happened at the closing would become part of her file. I spent the afternoon at the kitchen table reviewing the documents one more time. Trust deed, POA, capacity letter, the September POA with the shaking signature, the listing agreement, the purchase contract, the discharge summary from Lorraine's September hospital stay. Everything lined up. Every date, every signature, every medical note pointed in the same direction. I practiced what I would say. Short sentences, no accusations, no emotion, just facts delivered at the volume of a normal conversation. Ruth had coached me. You're not there to argue. You're not there to convince anyone. You're there to present documents that speak for themselves. Let the title officer do the rest. I wasn't the daughter they'd ignored. I wasn't the paperwork girl. I was the successor trustee of the Lorraine Caldwell Revocable Living Trust, and I had every legal right to sit at that table. More than a right, an obligation. That evening, I ironed a blouse and set out my work flats. The same flats I'd worn the night I'd driven 3 hours to sing happy birthday to a woman sitting alone in her kitchen. Tomorrow they'd sit down to sign for a house that wasn't theirs, and I would be there when they found out. The night before the closing, I sat with Lorraine in the living room. She was having a good hour, not a good day, those were rare now, but a good hour. She was working on a crossword with her reading glasses perched at the end of her nose, filling in the squares with a ballpoint pen, no pencil, because she said pencils were for people who didn't trust themselves. Gran, tomorrow's going to be a big day. MHM, she didn't look up. 7 across, legal instrument of protection. 5 letters. I smiled. Trust. She wrote it in. Smarty pants. I watched her hand. The pen moved slowly, but with intention. The letters were small and careful. Not the looping confidence of 14 months ago, but not the collapse of the September signature either. Somewhere in between. A woman at the edge of the window, still reaching for the glass. She put the crossword down and looked at me. You're staying. I'm staying. She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out her reading glasses case, the leather one with the brass clasp she'd carried since I was a girl. She opened it, took out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to me. It was a note, written in her handwriting. Shaky but legible. Recent. For Nora, the keeper of the table. Below it, her signature. Not the strong one from last year. Not the broken one from September. A middle ground. Trembling, but intentional. Written by a woman who knew she was fading and wanted to leave one more mark while she still could. I'm not gone yet, she said. I folded the note into my wallet. In the morning, the folder, the note, and I would go to the closing together. Main Street Title Escrow occupied a single-story brick building on Main Street with tinted windows and a brass door handle polished to a mirror finish. I parked across the street at 1:45. Ruth pulled in beside me at 1:50. Nathan was already inside. We walked in together. Ruth carried her briefcase. I carried the manila folder. Conference room 3 was small, 10 chairs around an oval table, a water pitcher, a printer humming in the corner. Marissa Cole, the escrow officer, was arranging documents in neat stacks at the head of the table. She looked up when we entered, glanced at Ruth, and paused for half a second, the kind of pause that meant she recognized the name. Ms. Adler. I didn't see your firm listed on the transaction. I represent the Lorraine Caldwell Revocable Living Trust. We have documents relevant to this closing. Marissa Cole's pen stopped moving. Before she could respond, the door opened behind us. Diane came in first, cashmere blazer, church pearls. Her smile was already in position, bright, social, the hostess arriving at her own party. Aaron followed in a tailored sport coat, his jaw set, a leather portfolio under his arm. Gregory trailed them, gray-faced, looking at the floor. Behind them came Brenda Voss, the realtor, blonde highlights, kitten heels, a stack of closing documents fanned in her hand like a winning hand of cards. And last, Daniel Fossey, the buyer's representative, in a navy suit and no-nonsense expression. Diane saw me and stopped. Nora. She looked at Ruth, at the folder in my hands. Her smile didn't change, but the muscles underneath it did. What are you doing here? Taking a seat, I said. I sat down at the table. Ruth sat beside me. I placed the manila folder in front of me, and I waited. The room was very quiet. The printer had stopped humming. Marissa Cole looked at Ruth. You said you have documents? I do. Ruth opened her briefcase and laid 3 items on the table, one at a time, each centered and square, the way you'd lay evidence before a judge. First, a certified copy of the recorded trust deed. This deed was recorded with the Briarwood Town Clerk on August 12th of last year. It transfers the property at 14 Oakwood Lane into the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust. Ms. Caldwell here is the successor trustee. Diane's smile fell. Not all at once, in stages, like a building losing floors. Second, the durable power of attorney naming me as Lorraine's agent. Executed on August 9th of last year, notarized, witnessed, currently in effect. Aaron leaned forward. We have a more recent power of attorney that supersedes. Third, Ruth placed the physician's letter on the table. A capacity evaluation by Dr. Helen Mercer, Lorraine's neurologist, dated August 9th. It confirms that Lorraine had full testamentary capacity when she signed these documents. I also have Dr. Mercer's current evaluation, completed last week, confirming that Lorraine now lacks capacity, meaning any documents she signed after her cognitive decline, including the September power of attorney your family obtained, were signed without the legal competence required to make them binding. The room went still. Marissa Cole picked up the trust deed. She read it. She compared it to the title report in her file. She looked at Brenda Voss. Ms. Voss, you informed me the trust had been dissolved. Brenda's face went white. I was told. The trust was never dissolved, Ruth said. The recorded deed confirms it. This property belongs to the trust. The sale cannot proceed. Marissa Cole set the documents down, squared her shoulders, and said the 5 words that ended it. I cannot close this transaction. She remembered. She remembered everything. Daniel Fossey closed his portfolio. Brenda stared at the table. Aaron gripped the armrests of his chair until his knuckles blanched. And Diane looked at me like I'd pulled the house out from under her feet. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then Diane broke it. This is ridiculous. Her voice climbed. She stood up, palms flat on the table, pearls swinging. Nora is a paralegal. She has no authority. My husband is Lorraine's son, her only child, and he has a signed power of attorney that gives him full control over. A power of attorney signed by a woman who was hospitalized for confusion the same week, Ruth said, even measured. Even if valid, it does not grant authority over assets held in a trust. You can't do this. Aaron stood now too. His voice wasn't Diane's theatrical escalation. It was raw. I have a $740,000 payment due in 6 weeks. If this deal falls through. Mr. Caldwell, your financial obligations are not this office's concern, Marissa Cole said. This is my grandmother's house, I said. This is the trust's house, Ruth corrected. Administered by the trustee your grandmother appointed. That trustee is sitting at this table. Aaron turned on me. You're going to destroy this family. I looked at him. I kept my voice at exactly the volume I'd practiced. Conversational. Steady. You tried to sell a 79-year-old woman's home while she sat alone on her birthday eating cake nobody came to cut. You had her sign documents during a hospital stay. You lied to the title company about a dissolved trust. And you're telling me I'm the one destroying this family. Aaron's mouth opened, closed. His fists were clenched at his sides. Diane was crying now, loud, messy sobs. After everything I've done. Gregory sat motionless. He hadn't spoken since he'd entered the room. He stared at the trust deed, at his mother's signature, and I could see him doing the math. She'd planned this. She'd gone around him. She'd looked at her only son and decided he wasn't enough. Daniel Fossey stood. I think we're done here. He nodded to Marissa Cole and walked out. Brenda Voss was already gathering her things, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Ruth spoke into the quiet. For the record, an Adult Protective Services investigation into the financial exploitation of Lorraine Caldwell is currently active. The September power of attorney will be formally challenged. Any further attempts to sell, encumber, or transfer trust property without the trustee's authorization will be treated as a legal matter. Diane stopped crying. She stared at Ruth, then at me. The tears still wet on her cheeks, but the expression underneath them shifting from grief to something harder. You'll regret this, she said. When Aaron loses his company, when your father has nowhere to turn, when this family falls apart, you'll remember that you did this. I stood up. I picked up the manila folder and placed it in my bag. I looked at my mother, at the cashmere, the pearls, the tears she'd learned to deploy like weather. You don't get to decide what she's worth, I said. Then I turned to Marissa Cole. Thank you for your professionalism, Ms. Cole. Marissa nodded. I'll be documenting this closing as void and flagging the file. You'll receive confirmation by email. I walked out of conference room 3. Ruth followed. Nathan held the door. The November air hit my face, cold and clean, and I stood on the sidewalk for 10 full seconds before I remembered to breathe. Ruth touched my elbow. You did well. I did what she asked me to. That's what I mean. I drove back to Oakwood Lane with the folder on the passenger seat, exactly where the sunflower bouquet had been 9 days ago. The house was there. The hydrangeas were still along the front walk. The porch light was on. I went inside and found my grandmother asleep in her recliner, crossword in her lap, reading glasses on. I knelt beside her chair and tucked the quilt around her shoulders. It's done, Gran, I said. The house is safe. She stirred. Her hand found mine, the same thin grip, the same paper towel roll wrist. Her eyes opened, cloudy at first, then clearing for just a moment. Nora, I'm here. Did you keep the table? I laughed, a real one, the kind that comes up from somewhere deep and surprises you. I kept the table. She smiled, small, certain. Good girl. She closed her eyes. Within a minute, she was asleep again, her breathing slow and even, the crossword puzzle rising and falling on her chest. I sat on the floor beside her recliner and looked at the kitchen through the doorway, at the maple table, scratched and coffee-stained, still standing where it had stood since 1974. The folder was in my bag. The note was in my wallet. The house was in the trust. And for the first time in 9 days, the counting stopped. Here's what happened after. Aaron's balloon payment came due 8 weeks later, right on schedule. He missed it. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings on his development projects, 3 half-finished townhomes in Glastonbury and a commercial lot in Wethersfield. AC Development Group filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in February. He sold the BMW. Last I heard, he was working as a site supervisor for a regional contractor, making a third of what he'd made before. He never called to apologize. Diane standing in Briarwood fractured. Not all at once, reputations erode slowly in small towns, but the story leaked. People talk. Aunt June talked. Marissa Cole documented everything in the closing file. The church group chat, the one where Diane had posted her Aspen selfie, went quiet around her. She stepped down from the garden club board. She and Gregory moved to a condo in Avon that spring. My father emailed me once, in March. 3 sentences. I should have done more. I know that now. I'm sorry. I read it twice. I didn't respond. Some apologies are too late to be anything but a record of what a person knows they should have said. APS substantiated the complaint. Over the following 3 months, through 2 probate hearings no one in my family contested, the September power of attorney was formally voided. The court appointed me as Lorraine's legal guardian and confirmed my role as permanent trustee of her trust. I deferred my bar exam. I took a leave of absence from the firm. I moved into the guest room at 14, Oakwood Lane, the one with the ceiling crack I'd traced since I was 6, and I became the person who made sure Lorraine Caldwell ate dinner, took her medication, and sat on the porch in the afternoons when the light came through the hydrangeas. It wasn't the career step I'd planned. It was the right one. On a Wednesday in April, I baked a cake, vanilla with buttercream, nothing fancy. I set it on the kitchen table, the table from Bridgeport, the one that had survived 50 years of Thanksgivings and 1 attempted theft. Lorraine came in from the living room, crossword in hand. Whose birthday? Nobody's. It's Wednesday. We're having cake because it's Wednesday. She sat down. She picked up a fork. She took a bite and closed her eyes. "This is my recipe," she said. "It is." "Good." She took another bite. "Don't change it." We ate in the kitchen with the afternoon light striping through the window. The prisms still hung above the sink, throwing small rainbows across the floor. The table held. A person's worth doesn't expire when their memory does. And the quietest love in a family is sometimes the only one keeping watch. That's my story. One empty birthday party, one manila folder, and a grandmother who remembered first. If this reminds you to check on a loved one's estate plans, do it today. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.